Process Art Discovery audience for joining me today. I'm Lynda Norman. I'm a watercolor artist in British Columbia. Today we're going to talk about cling wrap on watercolor paper to create beautiful textures. So today we're going to explore getting some texture on some paper, watercolor, student grade paper, fairly smooth surface. This would be cold pressed cellulose paper. Sometimes the rougher paper doesn't lend itself to producing the same designs for what I think I want to use these pages for today. Eventually I would probably do some Zentangle, some drawing, some embellishments on these and create greeting cards or bookmarks, that kind of thing. So I think we'll do a couple of different color variations. I'll start with wetting my pages. Because this is cellulose student grade paper, it's going to be a little bit buckled once we get the water on, but that's okay. Once it dries, it will flatten out. I've taped these pages down to a piece of pardon me, Coroplast. It's plastic with corrugated center. I love that those little lines there will give me indications as to where I can put my tape so everything lines up straight. Sometimes that's not as important, but I like to keep things as even and straight as possible. So I've just put some water on the paper with, this is the Solo 5 line brush. Holds lots of water. You could use a hake brush. You could use any kind of brush you have on hand. I like the bigger brush because it allows me to get more water on the surface. I don't want to be overworking and spending hours back and forth. So let's get the palettes another little wet down and get them woken up nicely. Let's put this back here. And we did some in the past. We have a new camera angle, so hopefully this helps you with seeing where things are taking place. I think today I'm going to start with, let's start with indigo. That sounds like a nice, sort of a nice color to get some base lines in. Indigo is a fairly deep dark color. I do love how these Daniel Smith paints, it doesn't really seem to matter often what color you use. They will disperse really nicely with the water. And then a little bit of a contrasting color. And I think today I'd like to try, some alizarin crimson. I don't very often use the crimsons. And the reds, more of the earthy tones is where I tend to end up, but let's try that. See what happens. And that's a really pretty mixture. That alizarin crimson, when it mixes with the indigo blue, gives kind of a purpley look. I like to lay the paints in fairly thick in spots. That will give us some nice definition and depth of shapes. I'm not really giving a lot of thought to how I'm placing these shapes, but I think these paints should have woken up a little bit better before that, so they're needing a little more. And I'm going to put a little bit of indigo in this, or pardon me, cobalt in with this one as well, just to fill in some of those places. Now with this technique, a little bit of cling wrap, plastic wrap. I've tried it with tin foil. I just like the plastic wrap because it's more malleable and easier to get on the page. And of course, this is not coming off the way I wanted it to, but that's all right. You can sort of shape this and move it around. I like to just kind of leave it there and let things evolve. So that was a sort of a beautiful blend of blues and reds. For the one right next to it, I'm going to try something, I think a little bit more on the earthy side. So let's get some nice water on here. Allow it to soak in a little bit. And here's a color I don't often use. It's quinacridone sienna. And it's just gorgeous. I don't know why I don't use more of it. I think it's just absolutely stunning. I'm also going to switch brushes just to see how different the marks can be. I kind of like using both. And then I think with that one, I want to try a browner tone, and I have some beautiful sepia, and I've got some transparent brown oxide in my other palette over here. So let's give that a try and see how they're going to react. This is going to be very, very fall-like colors. I just want to make sure I don't go back into the wrong well there. And let's just, for the fun of it, put in a little bit of brown oxide. It's a little on the redder side. There we go. Oh, this only happens on camera, right? All right. So let's just get that down. I often will save these pieces of plastic from one project to the next, just because sometimes it's nice to have that little extra bit of color showing up, just to show some shadows. So I'm going to set that aside, put a little weight just on the center of it, and then we will do another one quickly, and then we'll come back to them once they're dry. So we've got quinacridone sienna and some sepia and some transparent brown oxide. Let's go something a little brighter. Let's do some phthalo this time on this one over here. Now this has, my brush still has a tiny bit, if you can see that, just the faintest hint rather, of some of that sienna still in my brush. And that's okay, I don't mind that. It's nice to have sometimes that extra layer of texture. So I'm going to do a little bit of a phthalo blue green shade. And I'm just going to squeeze that on there. And then we have a phthalo green blue shade, which is kind of interesting. It'll be a little bit greener, of course, and quite bright. And let's just lay a bit of that in there and see where that takes us. And then the next adventure is, of course, taking the, there we go. By George, I think we've got it. The little air bubbles under the plastic wrap will create jewel-like shapes. I do like those phthalos for this kind of a project. It's nice and bright. And then let's try some, let's do some yellows and some greens perhaps. So a little bit of undersea green. And I'm using the paint fairly wet here. I like how it kind of takes a journey of its own. The undersea green is so beautiful and so granulating. And then if we put some quinacridone gold in there, and I'm going to switch brushes for that because I want a good load of the quinacridone gold just to come in, you can see how incredibly beautiful. Oh, and there's a hair. That's always handy. And we just drop a little bit here and there. That green really dissipated, and I do want some thicker pieces, and there's another hair. We'll take that out later. Oh, there's the tear part there. This one I'm going to scrunch and then pull out. And just lay that on top. We'll see what evolves. So we'll set this aside. We'll let them dry. We'll come back to them, take the saran off, and see what we can do with them. We'll see what shapes emerge, what beautiful pictures come to light, and move from there. We'll be back. So our colors with the plastic wrap are ready to be revealed. They're probably still a bit damp, but I think we're good to work on them. They're still going to be a bit buckled, and as I said before, because we're working on the cellulose paper, the student grade paper, a lot of that buckling won't come out until perhaps we leave it for 24 hours or longer under a stack of heavy books, or maybe we dig out the iron and give it an iron, but we'd want to wait until they were a little bit drier. So to work on these, rather than use a very fine point pen, which probably would, because the paper is still on the dampish side, might even cut into it, and also it'd be easier for you to see if we were to use a fatter nibbed pen, a Sharpie or various things. And some of you had said in the past that it was hard to see the drawing with the fine liner pens that I like to use. So for these, I will use a heavier nibbed Sharpie. And just so that you can see them a little more clearly, I will take them off the board, off the tape. You can see again where, because the cellulose paper is not as strong, not as nice, it will come off with the tape. This solo tape is wonderful because you can leave it on up to 12 days. And it shouldn't damage your painting if you're painting on high quality paper. And as always, remove your tape away from your painting, from your design, and as low to the surface as possible, and slowly. And that does help. All right. So here we had some indigo, we had some alizarin crimson, and we had a little bit of cobalt. And I can see where we've got some really beautiful lines coming through. I love that the indigo kind of provides a bit of a shadow. They look very organic to me. This almost looks like a bud of a thistle, the way this little pieces come down. Two pieces actually have come down here. I love that, very organic. And then another, perhaps one up here, and maybe even one here if I was to bring this right to the edge of the surface. If I was to put this in a frame, I cut the papers rather 6 inches by 8 inches, and I have a typical 5 by 7 mat here. So, you'd want to be careful on how you were placing your design, I suppose. You could go to a larger mat, but but it may not be the right size. You could get a custom mat, I suppose. But for now, let's work on just this design and see where we can go. So keeping in mind we're going to use thicker nibbed pencils. This is an it just says The Office permanent marker. I'm not sure where it came from, but it's in my collection, and so I'm going to follow along just so you can see, if you can't see with what's happening here. So we've got I'd be tempted to follow along this bit of a line here. I don't know if you can hear my puppy. She's not very happy that she's upstairs and I'm not. But she'll get a cookie later. So essentially I just follow along the lines that the plastic wrap has shown me to create these organic designs. This has beautiful, beautiful lines in it. You can add more if you want to complete the design, make it into something else. I just love that there's all these little branch pieces that come along and form in the pigments. So they're kind of reminds me of, you know, maybe the garden at the end of the year when things are left to, you know, a few dried leaves and some stalks and the undergrowth that's happening. But these are truly organic. I just love that that you can follow them along and create and then here's that other blossom I was telling you, but actually it looks like there could be two of them. So there's one and there's another one in the background. You can use whatever color you want. You can embellish with silver, gold. So I like that there's a lot of room for growth. You don't have to follow the lines in all cases either. You can draw your own design on top. So that's with a black Sharpie. I don't know that the pink would show up very well on this. We can try it. Not really. And it's a bit of a metallic. I don't know that. If I was going to go with metallic, I would likely go with something like this. It's a liquid chrome by Malto. And I always try to keep a little piece of paper on the side, just to make sure things are working properly. So for a finer line, and if I tip the page, you can probably see this later, but this is liquid chrome, and it really is chrome. It's just gorgeous. I just love it. And let's see if we can find some lines over here that we could follow. Try to keep your hand loose when you're following these lines. If it goes off the line a little bit, that's okay. The lines that are there will give you, you know, extra dimension, extra shading. So that, I think I'm going to bring that right over through here so it's got some continuity, and we'll bring it down in here. So if you can see that, it stays beautiful and shiny, and it's called liquid chrome. Mirror effect. The next one was the one we did with the quinacridone sienna and a little bit of sepia and some of the transparent brown oxide. These, the pens and markers are available in all colors. I typically stick with black. This is just from a dollar store craft section. And they have a package of 4 different thickness nibs and right up to a 0.8. So let's try the thicker one so that you can see it easier. And I'm going to take a look closely at what we can see here. See what shapes emerge. It's a beautiful combination of fall colors, kind of subdued, but that's okay. And quite often I see animals, but I don't really see animals emerging out of this one yet. There's again another leaf or flower form here. Let's start with that. I can follow along. Again, it reminds me of our garden at this time of year with all of these dried and beautiful seed pods and gorgeous things that are happening. And I'm just following the shading that the pigments have left. And if I come down this way, oh, and then I get to this one, and oh, there's another kind of wonky seed pod thing happening here with things hanging down and I like the finer tip. It gives you more of an opportunity to get into some of those smaller lines. I hope you can see that because I think that's really quite interesting how that has come through. Even though I can't see other designs down here, I could carry that on. I've done the seed pod, the dried flowers. So in this space here where there's a rather blank space, I can carry that on and I can just make a flower there. And as we saw with that one, it's kind of wiggly and jiggly. Leaves look like they have dried up a fair bit. And then there's more branches coming through the back. So you can create a whole design here. There's another little one there. Keep your pen loose, and you can come up with all kinds of little beautiful little shapes. And as you fill these in, you get this lovely little floral display. Now this could be cut into a bookmark. You could get a little bit of gold embellishments to put on it if you wanted to dress it up a little bit. And it's up to you to go in and make as many lines and shapes as you'd like, just by following what's there. You could do Zentangle ideas and just fill in shapes with other shapes. When it's drier, you could even go in with charcoal or graphite and do some shading. I won't do that now because it's still a bit on the wet side, but you get the idea. Yeah, just some random wiggly shapes and you've got flowers. So yeah, I probably would cut this down and make a bookmark out of it, and then work on this side for something else. And that probably would work if I cut it off here, because I can see some interesting shapes happening on this side as well. This almost could be you shape the outline, and then inside is almost like a rose. I can see those, and once you put in these beautiful flowing shapes and follow that organic theme through those lines, you can get a beautiful, beautiful flower shape. Because the page is damp, it's not allowing things to really flow the way they normally would. So I think there's potential with that one as well. I love the colors. This one, if you can visualize those lines being smaller, it would be a lot of fun as well. Those aren't my colors, those aren't my go-to colors, but I still had fun with that. It's definitely got some potential. I mean, you can leave these without any embellishments. They're quite gorgeous on their own. This one, for example, with the undersea green and the quinacridone gold, came out really beautifully, I think, with those organic shapes. A little bit darker colors. I think this was the one where I laid the undersea green in fairly thick. You can still see how light it dried. If you can remember how dark things were to start with. Always interesting to see how that happens. This one's popping out with actually I was going to say a rose, but when I look at it, it almost looks like a bat flying through there, which is kind of interesting. Or an owl. That would be interesting to turn it into a little owl. Can you see the eyes and the shape, and then the wings coming out? This almost looks like an eye here. That would be interesting to turn that whole piece into an owl collage almost. Very interesting. This was the one where we used the phthalo green blue colors. Phthalo blue green shade and phthalo green blue shade. Not to confuse the issue. I'm just going to, I'll take them off of here. This one, if you remember, I dropped a lot of water from my brush onto here, and it's still pretty damp. I don't know that I will attempt to draw on that yet, just because it is pretty soft and damp, but I can definitely see here where, you know, some lovely stalks and stems coming up, and lots of beautiful foliage colors and shapes. And I think with this one, I would follow those and create the beautiful stalks and leaves. And then if I wanted to add flowers or buds or thistles or anything, I probably would just draw those freehand, start with a few of the little shapes that I can see in the design, and then go from there. As with any of them, you could cut them and make 2 smaller cards, slip them into those Strathmore photo frame cards or photo mount cards that I was talking about in an earlier episode. It's entirely up to you and your imagination. And the colors that you choose sometimes will determine the design that you decide to work on. This one feels very wet still as well. And you can see here where it's darker, where it actually is a bit damper still. So with these, I think I would leave these 2 until they dried, until I flattened them, just so that they'd be easier to work on. The pens don't really want to move as quickly and as smoothly on a rough or on a wet surface, damp surface. But you can see so many possibilities here. This, you know, this piece here with the markings on it could be a palm tree, could be a birch tree. So many possibilities. I kind of like that owl idea, where I was, you know, seeing an owl flying here, and then the eye here, and possibly creating something else. It looks like perhaps something else could be flying out of this part. It would be very interesting to create a sort of a collage with a bit of organic shrubbery, trees in the background. So I hope this gives you a clearer view of what we were achieving with the plastic wrap on paper. Allow some drying time, and then have some fun. Go in with your gel pens, and the finer point ones are really quite lovely. You've got so many to choose from. The colors are incredible. I like often just to stick with black. Make the black design, do the Zentangle, do the sketching, the doodling in between. But yeah, I'm intrigued with this one. I will show you on another episode, perhaps once they're done, how that turns out. But in the meantime, have fun with it. Get some pigment on paper. Get your plastic wrap out, and put a bit of weight on it. Let it sit. Open it up. It's like opening a little gift every time I do it, to see just what emerges, and what can happen when you're least expecting it, and you let the pigments do what they need to do. I'd like to thank the Process Art Discovery audience for joining me here today. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe to the channel.